Early in the morning, the international airport buzzed with crowds, a scene of vibrant activity. Elizabeth, a 70-year-old woman, stood in the middle of the departure hall, looking out of place in her surroundings. She wore a faded cloth blouse, patched with delicate stitches, paired with black coarse trousers and old cloth shoes. Time had etched deep wrinkles on her face, and her back was slightly hunched. Yet her eyes radiated simplicity and kindness. In her right hand, Elizabeth tightly clutched a first-class plane ticket, a special gift from her son. He had worked hard in the big city for years, now successful in his career, always wanting his mother to enjoy a life of comfort. This was Elizabeth's first time flying, let alone in first class, so her heart brimmed with excitement and anticipation. She arrived at the airport early. With the staff's guidance, she smoothly completed the check-in process. Now, she stood in the waiting area, her worn cloth bag, a companion for half her life, by her side. Inside were homemade specialties her son loved and a few pairs of insoles she had crafted herself. Around her, most people were dressed in elegant attire, pulling expensive suitcases. They spoke fluently in foreign languages on their phones or discussed major business deals. A few lavishly dressed women passed by Elizabeth, their steps faltering. Their eyes scanned her from head to toe like searchlights. Then they gathered, whispering among themselves, "Look at that old lady, dressed like that and sitting in first class. She must have taken the wrong ticket." A woman named Sophia, wearing sparkling diamond earrings, sneered, her eyes full of disdain. "Probably some relative bought it for her. She wouldn't spend that kind of money herself." A man named David chimed in, a mocking smile curling his lips. He deliberately raised his voice, as if wanting Elizabeth to hear. Elizabeth caught fragments of their words, her heart sinking, but she held her head high, reassuring herself. "My son worked hard to buy me this ticket. I'm here rightfully." She quietly pulled her cloth bag closer, her gaze fixed on the boarding gate, hoping to board soon. Finally, the boarding announcement echoed through the speakers. Elizabeth hurriedly stood, slung her bag over her shoulder, and followed the crowd toward the gate. When her turn came, unfamiliar with the process, she fumbled for her boarding pass. The people behind grew impatient, urging her on. "Hurry up, old lady, don't waste everyone's time." A sharply dressed man in a designer tie named Robert frowned, his fingers tapping incessantly on the armrest. Flustered, Elizabeth's hands trembled even more. Just as she handed her boarding pass to the staff, someone behind bumped into her forcefully. She stumbled, her bag nearly falling. She quickly grabbed the strap and turned to look. The person who bumped her was a wealthy woman named Victoria. She shot Elizabeth a glance, muttering, "Watch where you're going," before striding past. Elizabeth bit her lip, saying nothing, only clutching her bag tighter. Guided gently by a flight attendant, she stepped onto the boarding bridge. Her heart raced, both from the nerves of her first flight and the sting of what had just happened. She took a deep breath, comforting herself. "It'll be fine once." "I'm on the plane." Elizabeth cautiously walked down the aisle, carefully searching for her seat. The spacious, luxurious first-class cabin amazed her, but the strange looks from others made her uneasy. Finally, she found her seat and sat down, barely relaxing when Victoria, seated beside her, wrinkled her nose and shifted away, as if Elizabeth carried an unpleasant odor. Victoria wore a designer outfit, her pearl necklace gleaming under the lights, her jade bracelet dazzling. She pulled out a handkerchief, fanning it before her nose, deliberately turning her face away from Elizabeth. Embarrassed, Elizabeth placed her hands on her knees, unsure where to put them. She glanced at her cloth bag, hesitated, then set it by her feet. At that moment, a flight attendant approached, smiling warmly. "Ma'am, let me help you stow your bag. Would you like a blanket?" "It's a long flight." Elizabeth nodded eagerly, grateful. "Thank you, dear. Sorry for the trouble." The attendant's kindness warmed her heart. But Victoria's surprised, slightly scornful glance reminded Elizabeth that in the eyes of these appearance-obsessed elites, she was an outsider. Still, Elizabeth didn't let it bother her. She leaned back, closed her eyes, picturing her son's smile, thinking, "As long as I see my son, this small grievance means nothing." The plane hadn't taken off yet, and Elizabeth sat in her seat, her mood gradually settling. Victoria's cold demeanor persisted, but Elizabeth tried to ignore it, curiously peering out the window at the ground crew bustling below. The kind flight attendant returned, noticing Elizabeth's unease. She knelt down, looked into her eyes, and said softly, "Ma'am, is this your first flight? If you feel uncomfortable or need anything, just press this call button and I'll be right here." She pointed to the button on the armrest. Elizabeth, touched by the attendant's bright smile, nodded. "You're so kind, dear. You've warmed my heart." The attendant stood, adjusted Elizabeth's seat, and handed her an in-flight magazine, saying, "Take a look at this to pass the time. Rest if you're tired. It's a long flight." Some wealthy passengers nearby saw this, a few frowning, thinking the attendant was overdoing it. Others looked surprised, not expecting such care for a plainly dressed elderly woman. But the attendant paid no mind, continuing to serve everyone attentively. Elizabeth gently touched the magazine's cover, her heart swelling with emotion. In this unfamiliar, somewhat cold first-class cabin, the attendant's kindness was like a warm ray of light, dispelling her gloom. She quietly memorized the attendant's face, resolving to tell her son about this compassionate young woman. The plane took off. Elizabeth's body tilted back slightly with the ascent. She gripped the armrests, a bit nervous. Outside, the scenery shrank, the city's outline fading into the clouds. Gazing at the view, her thoughts drifted to a few days ago. She had been in her yard, feeding the chickens, when the phone rang. She set down the feed bucket, dusted herself off, and went inside to answer. Her son's excited voice came through. "Mom, I've booked you a plane ticket. Come stay with me in the city for a while. We'll have a good time together." Elizabeth waved her hand, saying, "Oh, that must cost a fortune. I'm fine here in the countryside." But her heart was filled with joy. Her son continued, "Don't worry about the money, Mom. I can afford to give you a good life now. I got you a first-class ticket. Experience flying and see the city sights." After hanging up, Elizabeth was so excited she barely slept for nights. She dug out her old cloth blouse from the bottom of her chest, worn but clean. She packed homemade eggs, dried vegetables, and hand-stitched insoles into her cloth bag, eagerly preparing for the trip. She never imagined that in this first-class cabin, she would face such cold stares and hurtful words. Elizabeth sighed, gazing at the sea of clouds outside, thinking, if my son knew how they treated me, he'd be heartbroken. But the thought of seeing him soon lifted her spirits, her eyes sparkling with hope. The flight stabilized, but the atmosphere in first class grew heavier. Victoria, beside her, pulled out her phone, touching up her makeup while loudly boasting to a friend across the aisle. "My house is amazing. I wake up every morning to a sea view." The woman opposite, Emily, not to be outdone, tossed her hair, flashing a gold watch. "That's nothing. I just got back from a shopping spree in Europe, bought a closet full of designer bags, all limited editions. Money can't even guarantee you one." They went back and forth, their voices growing louder, as if afraid others wouldn't hear. Other wealthy passengers joined in, some bragging about their company's soaring market value, others about elite galas they'd attended, posing with VIPs. Occasionally, they glanced at Elizabeth, their eyes dripping with mockery and superiority, as if saying, "You, a rustic old woman, have you ever seen such splendor?" Elizabeth lowered her head, staring at her rough hands, her heart a mix of emotions. She didn't understand their talk of business or luxury, but she knew she was an outsider in their eyes. Yet she refused to feel inferior. She thought of her, Hard life raising her son, tending a few acres of land. Though not wealthy, she lived honestly and peacefully. She straightened her back, thinking, I don't steal or cheat. I live by my own hands. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Amid the vain, ostentatious atmosphere, Elizabeth held on to her simplicity and dignity. Lunchtime arrived and the attendants glided down the aisle with meal carts, serving elegantly. Before Elizabeth was a gleaming set of silverware, artfully, plated dishes and steaming tea. Overwhelmed, she didn't know where to start. Victoria glanced at her, a faint smirk on her lips, and kindly advised, Hey, old lady, be careful with the cutlery. You'll have to pay if you break it. And sip the tea slowly. Don't gulp it like water. Don't waste first-class quality. Victoria daintily stirred her coffee with a silver spoon, her movements almost theatrical. Elizabeth's face flushed. She smiled awkwardly, murmuring, Thank you. I understand. She mimicked Victoria, picking up the cutlery, but her hands, accustomed to a hoe, felt clumsy. She struggled to cut a piece of fish, and as she lifted it to her mouth, it slipped, falling onto the tablecloth, leaving an oil stain. Victoria gasped dramatically. Oh my, what a shame, wasting such fine food! Others looked over, some chuckling. Panicked, Elizabeth set down her cutlery, frantically wiping with a napkin, but it only worsened. Her eyes reddened, filled with embarrassment and helplessness. Just then, the kind flight attendant appeared. She gently took Elizabeth's hand, saying softly, Ma'am, it's okay, I'll help. She swiftly cleaned the table, brought new cutlery, and patiently showed Elizabeth how to use it. Elizabeth looked at her, eyes misty, her heart overflowing with gratitude. The lunch mishap passed, and Elizabeth was calming herself when her phone rang. The familiar ringtone echoed in the quiet first-class cabin. She hurriedly rummaged through, her bag prompting an annoyed eye roll from Victoria, who shifted further away, as if avoiding contamination. Elizabeth finally found her phone, seeing her grandson's adorable photo on the screen. She smiled instantly and answered. Her grandson's childish voice chirped, Grandma, is flying fun? Does the plane go super high? Are there lots of clouds? Trying to sound composed, Elizabeth laughed. It's so fun, sweetie. The plane flies really high and the clouds look like cotton candy. So pretty. But her eyes welled up. The trip's grievances surged, nearly breaking her. To spare her. Grandson worry. She kept her tone cheerful, describing the view outside. They chatted for a while until her grandson seemed satisfied, and she reluctantly hung up. Sighing, she wiped her tears. Victoria, witnessing this, scoffed, whispering to a companion, Quite the performance. With her status, how could she truly enjoy first class? Just putting on a brave face. Elizabeth heard the words, her heart stinging. But she turned to the window, unwilling to let their remarks hurt her further. Soon her phone rang again. It was her son. She quickly composed herself and answered. His concerned voice came through. Mom, have you boarded? Is the flight okay? Are you feeling all right? Not wanting him to worry, she said, Son, I'm on the plane, everything's fine, the flight's smooth, and the attendants are great. Don't worry. Just focus on your work. She tried to sound steady, but her hand trembled. The earlier slights flashed through her mind. Her son seemed to sense something, offering a few more words before hanging up. Elizabeth sighed, feeling helpless. Victoria mocked again, muttering, Humph, still acting tough with her son. Is that necessary? Elizabeth turned, looking calmly at Victoria, and said softly, I don't want my child to worry. That's a mother's heart. You wouldn't understand. Victoria, unsettled by Elizabeth's gaze, huffed and turned away. Elizabeth leaned, back, closed her eyes, praying to reach her destination soon, to see her son and end this trying journey. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the plane's window, casting a glow on Elizabeth's weary face. She was about to rest when another mishap struck. After clearing the lunch trays, the attendants brought fresh juice to ease the flight's dryness. Elizabeth eyed the vibrant juice with its delicate straw, delighted, and reached for it. Just then, Victoria abruptly leaned over, as if searching for something under her seat, her elbow slamming into Elizabeth's arm. The juice spilled, orange liquid flooding Elizabeth's clothes, legs, seat, and carpet. Victoria shrieked, feigning shock. "Oh my, what's wrong with you, old lady? So careless. If you ruin first-class carpet, it'll cost a fortune to clean." Her piercing voice drew every eye. Elizabeth stood, frantically wiping her clothes with a handkerchief, but the juice had soaked in, smearing further. Her eyes reddened, her voice trembling with apology. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry." "Everyone." Murmurs rose, sharp gazes piercing her, making her wish she could disappear. At that moment, the kind flight attendant reappeared. She brought a clean towel, wiping the juice from Elizabeth's clothes, saying gently, "Ma'am, don't worry, we'll take care of it. You're not hurt, are you?" She efficiently had colleagues bring cleaning supplies, tidied the seat and carpet, replaced Elizabeth's cushion and blanket, and brought a fresh juice. Watching the attendant's tireless efforts, Elizabeth choked up, "Dear, thank goodness. For you. I wouldn't know what to do otherwise." The attendant held her hand, smiling. "Ma'am, it's just a small accident. Rest easy." With the attendant's comfort, Elizabeth calmed, but her excitement for the trip had dimmed. The plane reached its transit stop. Passengers gathered their luggage for the connecting flight. Elizabeth slung her bag over her shoulder, following the crowd to the waiting area. She kept her head down, avoiding prying eyes, her steps heavy. She found an empty seat in the waiting area, just settling in when a well-dressed, portly man hurried over, scanning anxiously. Spotting the cloth bag. Beside her, his eyes lit up. He strode forward, grabbed it, muttering, "This is my bag. Why is it lying around?" Elizabeth stood quickly, explaining, "Sir, that's my bag. You must be mistaken." The man, Henry, glared impatiently, raising his voice. "You old lady lying through your teeth? This is obviously my bag. Same style, same color. I left it here just a moment ago. You must have taken it when I wasn't looking." Tears welled in Elizabeth's eyes as she clutched the strap, her voice quivering. "I didn't take it. I've used this bag for decades. It's full of things for my son. How could it be yours?" But Henry wouldn't listen, yanking the bag, shouting, "What bad luck dealing with a stubborn old woman." Onlookers turned, but most just watched coldly, none speaking up. Elizabeth felt alone, despair washing over her. Her hands shook, but she refused to let go. Just then, an airport staff member arrived. After reviewing security footage, they confirmed. The bag was Elizabeth's. Henry grudgingly released it, glaring at her, muttering, "Humph, lucky you." Elizabeth collapsed into her seat, tears streaming down. She couldn't fathom why her simple attire provoked such mistreatment. Overwhelmed with grievance, she longed to end this journey and be in her son's arms. With little time left before the connecting flight, Elizabeth sat in a corner of the waiting area, silently crying, her grievances suffocating her. Suddenly, a commotion stirred at the entrance. A group of sharply dressed individuals with commanding presence strode in. Leading them was Jack, the son Elizabeth had longed for. Tall and handsome, Jack's eyes carried the authority of a leader. He hurried forward, scanning the crowd. When he saw his mother weeping in the corner, his gaze softened with heartache. He rushed to her, knelt down, and took her hand, saying softly, "Mom, you've suffered. I'm late." Hearing his voice, Elizabeth lifted her tear-streaked face. Seeing her son, her grievances burst forth. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing, "Son, you're finally here. They all bullied me." Jack patted her back, soothing her, a flicker of anger in his eyes. The onlookers, who had mocked and mistreated her, froze in shock. They never imagined the old woman they'd humiliated was the mother of such a prominent figure. Victoria and Henry paled, stepping back, their eyes filled with fear and regret. Jack stood, surveying the room, his icy gaze silencing everyone. He gently supported his mother, and under the crowd's awed stares, they headed to the boarding gate. Leaning on her son, Elizabeth's heart eased. She knew, with him by her side, no one would dare harm her again. Those who had insulted her now grappled with guilt and unease, paying the price for their shallowness and arrogance. Still reeling from Jack's arrival, the crowd watched as he escorted his mother to the gate. A bespectacled businessman, snapping out of his daze, adjusted his tie and hurried after, flashing a fawning smile, cautiously asking, "Excuse me, are you—" Jack glanced at him, his expression cold, offering no reply. An assistant stepped forward, saying evenly, "This is our company's president, Mr. Jack Williams." The crowd gasped. Those who had ridiculed Elizabeth gaped, their eyes filled with regret and disbelief. Jack Williams, the renowned tech industry titan who led his company to countless triumphs. Victoria's face drained of color, unable to fathom that the rustic old woman she'd scorned was the mother of a business mogul. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words could undo her mistakes. Jack patted his mother's shoulder, saying gently, "Mom, ignore them. Let's board." He guided her forward. Watching her son's tall figure, Elizabeth swelled with pride. She recalled the tough years, raising him alone, toiling in the fields, selling eggs and growing vegetables, never wavering in her commitment to his education. Now her son's success and respect validated her sacrifices. On the plane, Jack attentively adjusted her seat and draped a blanket over her legs. Elizabeth looked at him, saying softly, "Son, I don't hold grudges. I just want you safe." Jack held her hand, resolute. "Mom, don't worry. No one will ever bully you." Again, in that moment, Elizabeth's grievances melted away, replaced by deep happiness and peace. The plane took off again. The first-class cabin's atmosphere had shifted entirely. Those who had mocked her now wore different faces. Henry, who had tried to take her bag, stood red-faced, holding a box of chocolates, approaching hesitantly, stammering, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for my mistake. This is a small gesture. Please forgive me." Elizabeth shook her head. "Take it back. I don't hold grudges. I just hope people can be kinder in the future." Henry stood awkwardly, unsure what to do. Victoria, restless, stole glances at Elizabeth. Seeing no sign of blame, she mustered the courage to say, "Auntie, I was thoughtless before, saying hurtful things. Please don't take it to heart. Raising such an outstanding son is truly admirable." Others crowded around, apologizing, praising her parenting, offering help. Elizabeth smiled faintly, her heart a mix of emotions. She knew their change wasn't genuine, driven only by her son's status. But she chose not to dwell on it, saying, calmly, "It's over. Everyone faces hardships on their journey." Relieved, they returned to their seats. Elizabeth gazed out at the sky, her thoughts drifting. She knew the world held coldness and vanity, but also warmth and kindness, like the ever-attentive flight attendant and her devoted son. These were her true treasures. The plane landed at its destination. With Jack by her side, Elizabeth stepped out of the cabin, sunlight warming her. She took a deep breath, sensing the city's familiar yet foreign air. Along the way, Jack eagerly pointed out buildings and sights. Elizabeth listened, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. At the airport exit, a luxury car awaited. The driver respectfully opened the door. Elizabeth settled in, watching the bustling city through the window, her heart full, reflecting on the journey, from the mockery in the waiting area, the slights on the plane, to the pride of her son's arrival, her eyes misted. She understood human nature's highs and lows. Those who judged her by appearance showed her the world's shallowness, while her son's devotion and the attendant's kindness lit her heart.